right now, it's all I can think to be God's faithful dog. That's all I want to be.
Mm.
I got a dog. I got an old a chocolate lab. I let her off the leash. She wanders in the neighbor's house, rolls in something stinky, but I still love her. And God sees every stupid thing we do, and
Yeah,
He still loves
yeah,
us.
yeah.
All He
Thank
asks is
goodness.
our love, and that's good because that's all I got to give Him. And
Uh,
but Will Rogers said, "You get to thinking you're a man of some importance. Try telling another man's dog what to do."
Hi there, and welcome into a brand new week on Celebrity Salute, dedicated to the men and women who serve our country in active duty, our veterans, and their families. We're here for you. God bless you. We love you. On each episode, we look for people and stories with some connection to these heroes. I am Randy Miller. Welcome back to the National Defense. It's Randy Miller. Man, this is going to be a great segment with a great American, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's an internationally recognized scholar, author, soldier, and speaker who is one of the world's foremost experts in the field of human aggression and the roots of violence and violent crime. I mean, you talk about a resume. Former West Point psychology professor, professor of military science, and an Army Ranger who has combined his experiences to become the founder of a new field of scientific endeavor, which has been termed killology. In this new field, Colonel Grossman has made revolutionary new contributions to our understanding of killing in war, the psychological costs of war, the root causes of the current virus of violent crime that is raging around the world. Is it ever? And the process of healing the victims of violence in war and peace. He is the author or co-author of 5 nonfiction and 4 fiction books. He's co-authored a New York Times best-selling book with Glenn Beck. His book, On Killing, has sold over 500,000 copies worldwide, has been translated into 5 languages, and is on the Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list. And I can't wait to get into this with Dave Grossman. Dave, welcome to the National Defense.
Hello, Randy. I'm honored to be on board. What a prestigious group of people you've had on here.
Well,
Jerry
it
Stevens is
just
right on top
grew a
of
little
it.
bit with you, sir. Thank you so much for being here. This is an honor, and to have a guy from Arkansas on the program. I mean, I'm going to have to speak slower.
That's it. A Missouri state trooper told me one time, he said, we can give the boot heel of Missouri back to Arkansas and raise the average IQ of both states.
So good. Hey, let me start by asking you
We
about your
claim Arkansas's home, but
yeah.
we tell Arkansas jokes. Good, solid people out there.
Listen. My wife and I went camping in Arkansas for the first time about 2 years ago, and we have been back now 3 or 4 times because it was such a beautiful state.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Man.
And real estate is right, taxes are right, leadership is right.
Right.
You get up there in the Ozarks, the weather is perfect. Just people, good God-fearing Americans are gathering and buying land up there in the Ozarks and settling down on the rivers and the lakes, and
beautiful.
it's a great part of America.
It's beautiful. Hey, let's talk about your military experience a little bit. It was 23 years. Is that right?
Well, I enlisted in 1974, 82nd Airborne Division. I had lied about my age and worked on the oil rigs when I was
Screaming
17
Eagle?
years old. What's that?
Screaming Eagle?
Yeah, no, 82nd
That's 100.
Airborne.
Oh, 101st. Okay.
All American, yeah. And I was working the oil rigs in the winter of 74, and I turned 18 in August of 74 and enlisted, and stayed south ever since, best of my ability. 82nd Airborne Division, E5, Buck Sergeant. Back in those days, rank came fast because we were hurting. Things were so bad. It was a hollow army. I got night school on my own time, married my high school sweetheart, went to night school, got 2 years of college, went to OCS, became an infantry officer, Ranger School, and all the good stuff. Fort Lewis, Washington, in the high-tech test bed, 9th ID, and then the Army gave me 2 years to finish my bachelor's degree, and then Fort Ord, California for a while, infantry company command. I got my grad school en route to teach at West Point. I think I was the only OCS guy teaching at West Point. Great place, wonderful people. And then went to the British Staff College for a year, and And Clinton was president. The Cold War's over, so I hunkered down as professor of military science at Arkansas State University. It was a good ride. When I arrived, we had 20 cadets. When I left, we had over 200
Oh, wow.
cadets, and
Wow.
I had a great job. I'd still be doing it if I could. And I retired 26 years ago. I've been on the road. My first book on killing, you kindly mentioned, is it came out, and I was on the road training for the last 26 years or more, ever since December of '97. Teaching, I think I'm the only person ever to be qualified to teach cops in all 50 states. I train a vast majority of Canada's military, punching out to Afghanistan, over hundreds of U.S. military units, no exaggeration, hundreds over the period of 23 years now. And it's been a glorious ride. I love what I do. I'm 67 years old, and it's my prayer I can do it for another 20 years. Wait. I tell people, waiting at home for me is my high school sweetheart, my bride of 49 years. She was 15. I was 17 when I proposed
Oh,
to her.
wow. Wow.
We are from Arkansas. And,
Hey, listen,
3 years later,
I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, so I understand every
that's
bit
right.
of that, you know.
Well, the Tennessee, state motto and is the same as the Arkansas state motto. At least we're better than Mississippi. So
And Alabama, but we weren't,
it's funny. I was about to say that. I was in Alabama and knocked that off. They say, "Oh, that's
that's
our
so
motto
funny.
too."
We're talking to
And
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman here in the National Defense. Yeah, what a ride! What a ride in the military. And is that where you developed your leadership style and some of your thinking about the psychology of killing?
well, I was a young paratrooper, 82nd Airborne Division. We had Vietnam vets all around us, and we wanted to know what combat was like. And they wouldn't say. It was like this taboo topic. It's kind of like talking about your sex life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not talked about. And I thought what was at the core of combat was the act of killing. So I went to get my graduate degree en route to teach at West Point. And West Point really did teach me how to teach and things that we've lost. Now presentation is being a PowerPoint ranger and
Right.
clicking the button
PowerPoint
when
Ranger.
when training used to be performance art. And
Right.
but my book on killing came out while I was at the British Staff College, and I went back to Arkansas State, and lots of opportunities to come and talk to people. The book really opened enormous doors, and but what I found out, prior to 9/11, the only people in combat every day were our cops, and they were in life and death events every day. And prior to the war, during that period, getting out in 96, 97, and on through 2001, I found out that what was really at the heart of combat, on killing is important, but what's really important was what I put in on combat. Now, I've got a son that just retired after 27 years, 10 combat tours, 3 Bronze
Oh,
Stars.
wow.
And this is the book I literally wrote for my son going his first combat tour. Much, much, much been added to it since then. This book was just translated into Ukrainian, and just last month it received the Ukraine National Book of the Year Award.
Wow.
It's also Commandant's required reading list, and so it was an evolutionary process. As I would be training people, I believe I've never done much myself. My war was a Cold War, but I believe I have talked to more people that have been in combat than anybody in human history. Hundreds of interviews in preparation for On Killing before I retired, and now on the road for 26, going on 27 years, a couple hundred days a year. Every day somebody comes up and says, well, here's what it was like for me. Auditory exclusion, slow motion time. Every hunter knows that when you fire a shot at the range without hearing protection, your ears will ring for the rest of the day. You go to shoot a deer, you don't hear the shot, and ears don't ring. So, how in the hell could we have had 500 years of gunpowder combat and not let people know the shots get muted? I mean, that's the core of on combat. Slow motion time, auditory exclusion, tunnel vision, memory gaps, memory distortions, really at the core of that. But what was really at the heart was when you re-experience the event. Arkansas State Trooper, first gunfight, bad guy's down, he's alive, happy end of the story. He said a week later, he and his wife are sitting in the bleachers watching their daughter at a swim meet. A starter's gun goes off when he didn't expect it. Boom. Heart pounding, gasping for air, drenched with sweat. His wife thought he's having a heart attack. He didn't know what it was. But what's happening in a life and death event, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mechanism kicks into gear. And there's a neural network established. A week later, a month later, a year later, some sound, some smell sets it off, and you go on that roller coaster ride again. It is not PTSD. It's normal. How you deal with it will decide whether or not it becomes PTSD. Now, I'll be going to Ukraine this Saturday. I will be training across Ukraine for on through next month. And that's the core of what I'm teaching them. When you re-experience it, it's not PTSD. I'm working with Israel extensively. Just sent a long email. I'll probably be traveling to Israel, work with their troops as well. And that's the core of it. Just that neural network kicks off, sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight goes in, your heart's pounding. It's normal. Now, imagine if my state trooper had said, I can never go to swim meet again. I hate 4th of July. I can't go to the range. I can't do my job anymore. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. You got to make peace with the memory. You got to separate the memory from the emotions. One tool is a breathing exercise we got in here, but another tool in recent years is a big swig of water.
We're talking to Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman here in the National Defense. That's interesting, Dave. That's very interesting. That's the first time I've heard that described as not PTSD. That's kind of revolutionary thinking. And
well,
so
when you look at the DSM, Randy, when you look at what the Bible of psychiatry and psychology says, number one, there's a life and death event. Now, we can't prevent that. That's your job to go in harm's way. Number two, your response was intense fear, helplessness, or horror. And our goal is to prevent those ahead of time. And a critical component, PTSD is far more likely to happen when the cause of trauma is human in nature. That's why violent crime is so traumatic. A tornado hits a house, put your family in the hospital, thank God they're alive. Criminals hit the house, put your family in the hospital, totally different story. And so first a life and death event, but next you re-experience the event. Right? That's not PTSD. The next step is persistently trying to avoid thoughts and incidents that remind you of the event. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. Then there's this array of symptoms that come along with that, hypervigilance, a lot of other stuff, and it's got to last at least a month. You can have every single one of the symptoms, and it's normal. It's only when it lasts over a month we say, okay, we have something that's gone beyond the realm of the normal.
Sure.
And it's got to cause clinically significant impairment in some part of your life. If you can still live a fully functional life, you don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. You have post-traumatic stress.
Right.
But you don't have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, and you know, I wonder too, Dave, is that you know, the problem that we have in this country right now is, which is so significant, is veteran suicide, and you know, everybody's trying to work on a solution to that. I wonder what you're talking about here, because you know, I've heard that described as there's PTSD, which leads to veteran suicide. What are your thoughts on that?
All right, well, there's something here that's important to know. I lost a brother and two nephews to suicide. We're in the middle of a global epidemic of suicide. And let's talk about a preventive measure in a minute. But we've all heard, you know, 23 veterans a day take their life, or the numbers vary. But you got to understand, veteran means everybody that ever served.
Right,
And
right. A lot of them are Vietnam vets.
Yes, and the Cold War vets. Look, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, the early 70s, we drafted everybody. Elvis Presley was drafted.
Right.
Elvis served for 2 years. Elvis got out. If Elvis was still alive, and if Elvis killed himself, he'd be one of those 22 veterans a day that take their life.
Right.
So understand, the vast majority of these people are and suicide, every suicide is a tragedy. And suicide among the elderly is a totally different subject.
Right.
But most of those 22 veterans a day that take their life are 70, 80, 90-year-old men who served for 2 years during the Cold War,
Right.
You know, never left America. They're veterans. We honor them. but this idea that
But they're put in
everybody
that
from
number.
this
They're classified as veterans.
sure.
Yeah.
And so the idea that they're all combat veterans is not true.
Right.
Only a tiny minority are. And the idea they're all from this war is not true.
Right.
Only a tiny, tiny minority from this war. But so understand the vast majority of the veterans do not commit suicide. The vast majority do not have PTSD. They have post-traumatic growth. We all know about the greatest generation, the World War II generation. And I'll tell you, Randy, in 23 years of war, a new greatest generation are rising up. The men and women coming out of our armed forces. Nobody has been drafted in this war.
Right.
This is unlike anything we've seen in the history of our nation. We've got over 2 decades of war, and nobody's been drafted. They are magnificent. And again, there are those who do take their life. So let's talk about that. That one of the major, we're in the middle of a global epidemic of sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is a key component in suicide. What sleep deprivation does, it makes you stupid. It impairs your judgment. You do stupid stuff. Now, alcohol and suicide have always been related.
Sure.
Alcohol is a major factor in suicide. Alcohol, it is not a natural act to take your own life. Every living organism has this prime drive to self-preservation. To intentionally take your own life, you have to have profoundly impaired judgment. So alcohol and suicide have always been related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment, make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. Look, you're only drunk for a little window.
Right.
You're sleep deprived forever, always. And when we look at teen suicide, or teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled per capita in just the last decade. And this is that's in America, but worldwide suicides have exploded. And the new factor is this global epidemic of sleep deprivation. Anybody who's been to Ranger School or SEER School will tell you on that third day without sleep, you're psychotic. On that third day without sleep, you will see things and hear things that are not there. And we got people out there going days without sleep. They play the video game all night long. They're on social media all night long. They binge watch TV shows all night long. And the best meta study on suicide says not only is sleep deprivation a key factor in suicide, it's the most remediable factor. We can't do much about your finances or your relationships right now, but we can get you a good night's sleep right stinking now. And this impaired judgment after 24 hours without sleep, you're the equivalent of blowing 0.10 blood alcohol level. So after 24 hours, you're almost suicide bait. You got predisposing factors, and you make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. In our military right now, the Army is launching an initiative on a wellness initiative on unit after unit. And part of the wellness initiative is sleep hygiene. And they have noticed a significant reduction in suicides. I trained an Army infantry unit from the 101st Screaming Eagles that were punching out to Iraq. And the command sergeant major told me, he said, on our last deployment, he said, we're in like a semi-barracks environment during the night and then combat patrols during the day. He said, I told the troops, it's lights out after 9 o'clock. He said, if I find you playing video games after 9 o'clock, I'm going to take your video games. He said, a week later, I had a closet overflowing with video games. He said, these are good troops. They wouldn't disobey an order. They can't not play those damn games. I had a brigade commander from the 101st tell me, he said they had a deployment in which they were totally primitive. There were a few generators, but they didn't have Game Boys, and they didn't have TV, and they didn't have video games, and he said it was the healthiest deployment we ever had. We'd play cards, we'd talk, we'd go to bed, we'd get a good night's sleep, we'd get up in the morning, we'd work out, and we'd do our job and play cards and go to bed. He said it was the healthiest group we've ever seen. So there's a new factor out here. It's really tearing us apart. A lot of people have played a video game, and suddenly it's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's time to get dressed and go to work. Yeah. You got no idea where the last 8 hours went. They do that on purpose. It's called a flow state. And no exaggeration, billions of dollars of research had gone into these video games to make them as addictive as humanly possible. So sleep deprivation is a key factor in suicide, without a doubt.
That's so interesting.
And military suicides are a major concern. But every suicide's a concern, and we got to realize it's this global epidemic of suicide. And the new factor is sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is a key factor in traffic death. Suicide and traffic deaths are two major killers of our kids. Sleep deprivation is a key factor in the opiate epidemic. Now, follow me in this, it's important. Fentanyl is an opiate. Fentanyl kills 70 to 80,000 Americans a year. In the entire Vietnam War, we lost a little less than 60,000 American troops. Fentanyl kills more than that every year. It's an opiate. Now, first, talk national defense. All the fentanyl, the precursor drugs are coming from China into Mexico. They're converted to fentanyl and come across the border. Now, China is a totalitarian nation that controls every aspect of their society. But somehow, year after year, they can't prevent tons of precursor drugs going to Mexico. It is a straight up, and again, 70 to 80,000 Americans a year dead. If it weren't for Narcan, that number would be much higher.
Right.
And so when you look at history, it's worth going online and looking up the Opium Wars. For two different times in the 1800s, Western powers went to war with China to be able to keep selling opium to them. Now, China had lots of stuff that the West wanted. We didn't have nothing they wanted, except opium. And so we pumped opium into China and got the stuff we wanted. And the emperor, two different times, tried to make opium illegal. And two different times, we went, not one of our, France, England, two different times we went for the war to keep selling opium to these people. Now, they call it a century of humiliation. And now this is payback, with them putting tons of precursor drugs through Mexico, fentanyl killing 70 to 80,000 Americans every year, destroying lives. But step back a step. Prescription opiates have always been there. And the demand's through the roof. So here's the thing. Sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. You don't sleep, you're going to hurt. Doc, if we've all had a bad night's sleep, or we missed a night's sleep and we ache the next day, you don't sleep, you're going to hurt. Doc, I hurt all the time. Give me a pill to fix. You don't need a pill. You need more sleep. And you got to knock off the caffeine shortly after lunch. This caffeine in our system, when we go to bed, makes us have bad quality sleep. We don't get the muscle relaxation. We don't get and lack of deep cycle sleep is a key factor in Alzheimer's, and it's a key factor in pain. So do an online search: suicide and sleep deprivation. Boom. Again, online search: suicide and traffic deaths. Boom. We all know that. You can't miss that. I'm sorry, sleep deprivation, suicide, boom. Sleep deprivation and traffic deaths, boom. Then do a search: sleep deprivation and chronic pain, boom, come right up. One final ingredient: sleep deprivation is a key factor in Alzheimer's, without a doubt. People say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You have a decade of Alzheimer's first, you idiot. The lack of deep cycle sleep is a critical factor in Alzheimer's. And that caffeine, these mega doses of caffeine is good for us. It's useful. But somewhere after lunch, you got to cut off caffeine.
I can't drink caffeine. If I drink caffeine after 2:00 in the afternoon, I don't sleep good.
Good for you. And you're conscious of that. Good deal.
Well, what's funny is, so my wife and I were watching a talk that you gave, and you were talking about how these kids playing video games, how that leads to this violent behavior. And my wife stands up. He's right. Because she said that for so long. We're talking to Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman here on the National Defense. So, I mean, everything you're saying has it's some new information for me. But I also want to talk about you wrote a book about spiritual warfare, spiritual combat, right?
Yeah, and this is in the end, we're in a battle against forces of evil, and I wrote the book on combat, on killing, on hunting, and on spiritual combat. And what I tell people is this: I train first responders in all 50 states. I train on military, and our first responders in particular, they see every bad thing that happens, every single bad, terrible, tragic event that could possibly happen. They're there. And this is not about religion, really. I tell all of my audience, it's an existential question
Hmm.
every human being asks: how could a loving God allow these terrible things to happen? And the answer is pretty simple, and almost all the world's religion would agree: we are not God's puppets. A loving father would not hang over your shoulder every minute of every day, protecting you from everything that happens. And have you ever heard, if you love something, let it go if it comes back at
Right.
yours? That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decision. That means a lot of people make bad decisions,
Hmm.
and a lot of bad things happen. You say, God, why don't you do something? He says, I did. I sent you. So that's our
Hmm.
purpose in life.
Hmm.
It's about spiritual warfare. Now, in normal warfare, you win in large part by killing the enemy. In spiritual warfare, you win by saving them.
Hmm.
And the whole outline on spiritual combat, what are you doing basic training? First thing to do is equipment issue. And the duffel bag drag as you go with all this equipment. And we've got here Ephesians chapter 6, the equipment issue, and then basic training. And then just this year, the sequel came out, Dive into the Deep End of the Pool on spiritual warfare.
Hmm.
But we tell people, don't curse God when he doesn't answer your prayers the way
Right.
you think he
Right.
should.
Exactly.
In the end, we're all going to die. And very few deaths are really easy deaths.
Yeah.
The body doesn't easily let go of life. Everybody's going to die. In the end, every nation falls over my dead body. In the end, our son will die,
Hmm.
but eternity continues.
Right. Right.
If you're a person of faith,
Right.
look at the big picture. And God's greatest blessing is not less suffering, because he didn't really promise that. He'll help us deal with suffering.
Right.
And his blessing is not that we don't die here on earth. Uh, he does pray for everything and look to him for everything. But his greatest blessing is eternity in heaven,
Hmm.
literally infinitely greater than anything else.
Right.
And if any remote idea there might be God, he might be the God of the Bible, I really recommend this book. It lays the foundation for what our mission is here. It's been incredibly well received. Praise God. It's being used for Bible studies in police departments and military units around the world. We're just about to get it translated in Ukrainian.
Hmm.
I told you my book on killing on combat was translated into Ukrainian.
Yeah.
It's just really a big hit, and that'll be the next one that we're able to put out there. And in the end, we're in a fight against battles of forces of evil.
Well,
We need a
I mean,
force.
God never promised that everything would be good,
Amen to
and
that. He
he
said
he,
all
he
things
only
come
promised
together
that
for
in the
good.
bad things, he's walking through with you, right?
Yes,
Isn't that it?
yes.
I
And
mean,
and, and
that's
here's
that's
all
my
things come
viewpoint.
together. Here's the verse: all things come together for good
Yep. Yep.
for them that love the Lord, according to his purposes.
Yes.
So people just put out all things come together for good. No,
Right.
for those who love the Lord,
Yeah.
according to his purposes.
Well, and Dave, my favorite verse of the Bible is Proverbs 16:9, which is man makes his plans, but God directs his steps. So that
Amen.
says to me that it's okay to make your plans. If God's not in it, it's not going to happen anyway. And so
Praise
and so
God.
far, God doesn't like about 99% of my plans. But that's okay because the 1% that he
Amen.
likes, he loves them and they're awesome. So,
Hey, and brings us back to this fundamental question. All my first responders, all my military, why do we stay in the fight? We had an all-time record number of cops shot in the line of duty last
yeah.
year. A couple of years before that, in 2021, all-time record number of cops murdered in the line of duty, in spite of body armor,
Mm.
in spite of leaps and bounds of medical technology. The murder rate's a lie, because every year medical technology saves ever more lives. It's much worse than it looks.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, homicides exploded orders of magnitude worse than anything we have ever seen before.
Mm.
And wheels are coming unglued. Wheels are coming off the bus. Our cops are being videotaped, and every action they do are being held accountable. Why would anybody do this job?
Mm.
I tell people all I can do is tell you why I keep doing the job. I'm 67 years old. Waiting at home for me is my bride of 49 years. I get home one, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, conjugal visit, clean underwear, back in the room. But the only person on earth more precious than my bride are my children,
Sure.
my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I got a grandson in the Army now, Indiana National Guard,
Oh,
Intel.
wow.
He's a smart kid. He didn't go infantry like his grandpa. He went Intel. And in a blink of an eye, we'll be great grandparents. And we believe if we love our family, if we love our nation, if we love our God, we'll give 100%.
Hmm.
All the people you're talking about, all the people you serve, military, law enforcement, they're internal defense and external defense. That's it.
Right.
That's the first responders and our military. All the people you serve out there, nobody is doing this for the money.
Right. Right.
You'll never get
Absolutely.
stinking filthy rich, do it,
Uh,
at least not legally. And
absolutely.
nobody's doing it to be famous.
Yeah.
You'll never be a famous celebrity, at least
Mm-hmm.
not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
When you chose this life, you chose a life of sacrifice. And you must believe your sacrifice is for a noble and worthy purpose. Now, that kind of takes us to the sheepdog model. So, first is understanding how desperately the world needs what you have to give. Now, I coined the term, I've got the US government trademark for the term sheepdog as a protector, and I give people permission to use it. They contact, oh, I want a sheepdog. I send them a nice letter suitable for framing, giving them permission to use the name. But we wrote the Sheepdog Kids book. And this idea of being the sheepdog, right? We're talking about resiliency. We're talking about people who do not get PTSD. And one of the famous ones is a man named Viktor Frankl. He walked out of a Nazi death camp. He wrote some important books. He walked out of a Nazi death camp, a human skeleton, enduring unthinkable evil, and he did not have PTSD. And he said, I realized the only thing in the universe these Nazi bastards couldn't control is how I choose to respond. Is that the sheepdog? The sheepdog chooses to prepare. The sheepdog chooses to walk the warrior path, the sheepdog path, the hero's path. And you come up that path. The Bible says faith without works is dead. You know, you may be motivated to do this job, but turn that motivation into action and seek training and seek opportunities, come further up those steps and be the sheepdog. Let go of everything you can't control. The past, everything in the past is done. Let go of it. Turn it over to higher power.
Absolutely.
That's why faith is one of the pillars of resiliency around the world. The future is uncertain. What other people are doing, what the idiots doing, you can't control that.
Right.
The only thing the universe can control is yourself. And if we give way to bitterness or cynicism or complacency or denial, that's the one thing we can control. And one final point on that, you don't lose your temper. You give it away. It's the only thing you can control.
Right,
That's easy to say.
right.
It ain't so easy to do. But to paraphrase Viktor Frankl, I tell my cops this, and they get it. Life is a game, and you lose your temper, you lose the game. And yeah, I thought being a colonel was about shouting at people and screaming and kicking, and then I realized nobody respects our temper tantrum. They respect our calm. And I talk about nurturing an environment of quiet professionals. The laconic Spartan, the stoic Roman, the inscrutable samurai, the stiff upper lip Brit. And today we talk about the quiet professional. Nobody respects our temper tantrum. If the day-to-day pissant stuff makes you blow your cool,
Right.
then when things are going to hell, we're not going to be able to depend on you.
That's a great
They
point.
respect our calm.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is with us here in the National Defense. Let me ask you about this, Dave.
Yeah.
I've heard you talking about the warrior mentality, and it's so important to be prepared, to be on the lookout, to be ever ready. How do you balance that against your faith and trusting completely in God?
Yeah. You know, once again, we trust in God for eternity in heaven. You understand? Absolute faith in that. But as far as what happens on this world, then we've got to understand. You know, my faith is a neck deep foxhole with 3 layers of sandbags. You know, does that make us unfaithful? You know, I put my seatbelt on. Does that make us unfaithful? Right. The idea that we're totally, it's crazy. God gave us seatbelts, and He gave us dirt to dig foxholes out of, and He gave us sandbags. You know, God gave us the guns and the ability to protect ourselves. This fatalistic idea that it's all His will. If Allah chooses, well, we don't believe like that. We understand that God put you here to do His will, and it's your job to do these things. We are His instrument for spiritual warfare. We don't just sit back and let things happen. Right. We go out and make them happen. And this being the sheepdog. And, one of the things in the 1980s, I was interviewing World War II vets and Vietnam vets by the hundreds. I'd present to reunions and conduct interviews and surveys. And one thing that really had that generation troubled was thou shalt not kill.
Hmm.
And thing to understand is you shall not murder. All the Jewish translations of the original Hebrew translate shall not murder. Almost all but one of the modern translations translate shall not murder. Even in the King James, kind of a weak translation taken terribly out of context. In turn of the King James to Matthew 19:18, Jesus running through the commandments, and Jesus says, "Thou shalt do no murder." So I tell people, it's World War II. And did all of our chaplains and priests and ministers and rabbis, did they all preach, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill, the war began? Yeah, I'll go kill those guys. It's cool. We change our mind. No, that's not what happened. 99% of our religious community for 5,000 years have believed that those who go in harm's way to protect lives, to protect our nation, have never received anything but the highest honor. And we talk too on spiritual combat. We throw in this concept of being in a republic such as ours. We are the rulers. By our votes, we decide where our nation goes. And we've been given authority. And if we do not use that authority to move our nation towards paths of righteousness, if we don't vote and vote for righteousness, then we're like the kings of the Old Testament, and the evil kings of the Old Testament who are given authority and didn't use that authority to move them in the right direction. So there's a really, this idea that the Lord is going to come and we don't have to worry about anything. Well, for 2,000 years, if that had been what they thought, nothing would have got done. The great Christian dynamic is we have to build our nation as though our grandchildren would live in it, but we live our lives as though we had to answer to our Maker tomorrow, and all of us will have to answer to our Maker, and it could happen. Never know when.
Absolutely.
And it's so important to get yourself right with heaven. I tell people, heaven's going to be awesome. If I get there first, I'll save you a place by the fire.
Well, hey, let me ask you a couple of just a personal questions here, Dave. And by the way, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to have you, and the points you're making are so relevant. What kind of music do you like?
Iron sharpens iron. It's a two-way street, brother.
Well, thank you. What kind of music do you like?
If you would look at what I've got, I just finished a 10-hour drive down to Dallas and 10 hours back. And if you looked at my Sirius radio, you would see the 40 station, the 50 station, the 60 station, the 70 station.
Oh, that's mine.
You would see Willie Nelson's Roadhouse. And I love this diverse field. But one of my stations is a contemporary Christian and classic Christian. Bill Gaither's now become Bill Gaither's Christian Southern Gospel Christian station.
Sure, yeah.
I spend a lot of time on Sirius listening to the Christian stations, and but I just love this stuff. I listen to a 40 song, and then some song comes on that doesn't quite hit my button, and I start flicking through the channels until I get another one. I'm driving along, just singing. My wife, I called my wife out, and I started singing these songs on the radio. She said, "Do you have a karaoke there? Where do you know all those words?"
Oh, that's so good.
I just take this delight in this vast array of music. I'm not a fan of hip hop, or rap.
Do you know who Craig Morgan is? You know who Craig Morgan, the country singer? Do you know Craig?
Just really remotely.
A veteran, and also just re-enlisted in the National Guard on stage at the Grand Ole Opry. Just a great,
God bless him.
Just a great patriotic American. And I asked him what he thought about Beyonce's new country song, and you've never seen a man squirm so much in your life. I mean, he was not a fan. But just a great guy.
Yeah. And there's great Americans out there doing wonderful things.
We have them on the show every single week. And
I'll give you an angle on this. I think your listeners could identify with this. We talk on spiritual combat about being God's sheepdog, being the protector of God's flock. And we take it a step further in non-spiritual warfare. I just want it when we get to heaven, God will embrace us as beloved children, and we will understand things we cannot even comprehend right now. But right now, it's all I can think to be God's faithful dog. That's all I want to be. I got a dog. I got an old a chocolate lab. I let her off the leash. She wanders in the neighbor's house, rolls in something stinky, but I still love her. And God sees every stupid thing we do, and He still loves us.
Yeah.
All he asks
Thank
is
goodness.
our love, and that's good because that's all I got to give him. And but Will Rogers said, "You get to thinking you're a man of some importance. Try telling another man's dog what to do."
Yeah.
If you ever did that, if you ever tried to tell somebody else's
That's
dog what to
pretty
do,
good.
the dog would look at you.
Yeah.
If the dog could talk, here's what he'd say: "I don't know much. I'm just a dog. I know this, and not your dog." And once you have become God's dog, when the evil one comes to you, you look him in the eye and say, "I'm not your dog." The worst you can do is take away my life, and then I'm with God. And the most important thing in the universe, it really did happen. Jesus really did die on the cross. We have 4 contemporaneous parallel accounts. He really did rise from the dead. The disciples really did eat with him. Their doubting Thomas really touched the wound on his side. And here's how we know. 11 of the 12 disciples were martyred for their faith. Men don't die for a lie. They didn't want to die, but they wanted to say that, no, I won't renounce it. It really did happen. And I'm willing to die to make sure you believe it. And they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, they absolutely knew that the moment they're dead, they'll be in heaven with Jesus.
Absolutely.
And then we had the disciples, and that's straight up Roman history, who died for their faith. Men don't die for a lie. It really did happen. It's the most important thing in the universe. But God so loved the world, He sent His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth shall not perish, have everlasting life.
Not know of Him.
Yes. And people say, well, I wish it was true. I wish there was a loving God. And I tell them, that's a little seed of faith. Plant that seed of faith. A man asked Jesus to heal his child. Jesus said, if you have enough faith, anything's possible. He said, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. Boom. Jesus did what He asked him to do. Right. All He wants us to do is ask for more faith. And what's our job? The commander's intent is to love God and to love people. And our mission is the Great Commission, to bring people to the knowledge of salvation. Remember, in normal warfare, we win in large part by killing the enemy. In spiritual warfare, we win by saving them. The commander's intent is to love God and love people. So ask God for more love. If our mission was to plant explosives on a bridge, we go get explosives. If our mission is to love God and love people, then we go to the love supply point and ask for more love. And every day we should ask for more faith and ask for more love.
Absolutely.
And be God's faithful dog. And when the evil one comes for you and yours, you look in the eye, say, I'm not your dog.
I'm not your dog. I love that. I love that. Dave, I could talk to you all day. I just love this. Let's
do it again sometime. I would love to.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And, I would tell you, best of luck. You don't need luck. I mean,
well, I'll be in Ukraine for the next couple of weeks here, and I'll let you know how it turned out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you. So, hey, where's the best place for people to find out more information?
Well, thanks for asking, Randy.
Absolutely.
My website is GrossmanOnTruth.com.
Grossman
the truth on killing, the truth on combat. GrossmanOnTruth.com.
Fascinating.
And all my books are there. We'll personalize them for you. You can always get them through Amazon. Bring my Amazon numbers up. But we'd like you to go to the website. Give me a chance to give you a signed edition. If you ask, we'll personalize them for whoever you like. And
that's so cool.
all of them are there. And so thank you for asking. And thank you, Randy, for what you do and your listeners do. God bless you, and God bless America.
We'll be right back here in the National Defense.
God bless you, brother. Stay in the fight. We need you.
Thank you.
Go on.
You've been listening to Celebrity Salute. Celebrity Salute is produced by Brainstorm Media and distributed by National Defense Network, with host Randy Miller and executive produced by Nate Herron. Be sure to visit us at nationaldefensenetwork.com. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also say, Alexa, play the National Defense Network podcast.